Anchor Bay brings to Blu-ray a film documentary that was previously only available on DVD. This is from 2012, Beast Wishes, The Fantastic World of Bob and Kathy Burns. This runs only 60 minutes. As I say, it's a Blu-ray directed by Frank Dietz and Trish Geiger, and it features Bob and Kathy Burns, Rick Baker, Joe Dante, Dana Gould, John Landis, and a lot of people you would recognize, especially if you are into horror movies and monster movies and just retro pop culture. Presented in English 5.1 and English stereo with English and Spanish optional subtitles. This is a documentary about, as I said earlier, if you were listening, this is a story about Bob and Kathy Burns. Who are they? Bob Burns, if you liked Saturday morning live action filmation stuff in the early-ish 70s and watched the Ghostbusters, nothing to do with the Ghostbusters everybody knows now. It started, Ghostbusters originally was a show with Forrest Tucker and Larry Storch and Tracy the Gorilla. Tracy the Gorilla was portrayed by Bob Burns. Bob Burns is a guy who was, they say, maybe the first monster kid, maybe the first super sci-fi fan. He was a guy who grew up in California in the 40s and 50s who loved movies, who loved monster movies, and was able to befriend the people who made them. He worked with Paul Blaisdell, who worked on a lot of the early AIP films like Invasion of the Saucermen and The She Creature and things like that. He was a friend and an associate of those people and wound up being able to work in these films. He eventually became a gorilla suit actor, like I mentioned with the Ghostbusters live action show. He became friends with a lot of up and coming special effects people like Rick Baker as a youth. And he was a person who just loved movies. And his wife, Kathy, who he met, was as into it as much as he was, if not more. And together they would do these amazing Halloween shows at their house. They would, with the help of Hollywood effects people or wannabe Hollywood effects people, they would redecorate their house, their driveway, their garage, and turn them into these amazing walk-through experiences. One of the early ones looked like a flying saucer crashed into their house, or a giant tentacled alien was sitting on top of their house with a one eye that moved back and forth. Maybe the most famous one they did, and there's footage of a lot of this in there too. One of the most famous was after Alien came out, right as it was still in theaters, they transformed their driveway into like a hallway from Alien, and they had actors, and you'd go through and you'd kind of watch this show, and they had people in an alien costume. And Walter Koenig, Chekhov from Star Trek, wanted to be part of this, and he was like the actor in it. And there's good footage of him doing this. And apparently 20th Century Fox was so impressed with what Bob had done, they gave him like everything they had as far as in their warehouse, as far as props and set pieces and vehicles and the spaceship from Alien. They're like, we don't have any use for this. We made a movie. The movie's over. You take it. And that was a big thing about Bob Burns. I wish I had the book with me because I own it. There was a book, if you can find it, that's great, called It Came from Bob's Basement. Basically, over the years, Bob Burns was gifted innumerable original props from sci-fi movies and horror movies that the studios, initially it was the studios were like, we're just going to throw this away. Some of the stuff was like pulled out of dumpsters outside the studios. Later, they realized he was a person who would take care of this stuff and show other people this stuff, and they just started giving it to him. And then later, as people who he befriended either before they were famous or after became successful, they would give him things. So like the werewolf in American Werewolf in London, when there's that shot looking down the escalator and the guy's on the escalator cowering in fear and you see the werewolf walking forward, Bob Burns had that. John Landis gave it to him. Rick Baker gave him stuff. So his basement became this amazing, and then later, I guess, garage and or addition to the house became this, very much like Forrest J. Ackerman, this amazing collection of screen-used props and artwork and things that would have just been thrown away and lost otherwise. And this was a super fan who was able to cherish it and share that joy with other people. So what you really get out of this documentary is the story of Bob and Kathy Burns as a couple and how they influenced people. It is an endless parade of people saying how great the Burns were. They're both sadly no longer with us. Bob Burns passed away very recently in terms of when this disc is coming out, like a week or two before this Blu-ray release. Wonderful people, kind people, funny people who were just super fans and loved horror, sci-fi, monster movies, and how they intersected, how the fans basically became close with the people who made these movies, and how they never stopped sharing that with other people, sharing that love and generosity with other people to inspire other people to do this kind of work. And even though sadly we live in an era where practical effects are far, far less common than they were in those days in favor of CGI and computer enhanced and all this other stuff, it's nice to see a film that pays tribute to the people who greatly appreciated that and the people who helped to try to keep that alive. And again, hearing from a lot of the people who actually made these movies over the course of this hour documentary. I had received this originally when it was released on DVD back in 2012. I don't know if it was ever available via retail. I think this was one of those documentaries which is very common around that time, where people would make these very specific niche documentaries and they would just sell them themselves through their website. And this is how I got that. So I originally had and I really wanted to compare, normally I would do this. I really wanted to compare the Beast Wishes DVD that was released in 2012 with this new Blu-ray to tell you if there were any extras that were on that DVD that are not on the Blu-ray. I feel like there were, but I couldn't find the DVD. I think I may have actually gotten rid of it when I was trying to slim down my stacks a little bit. And if you've seen the stacks, that's a Herculean task. I think it was one of those where I liked it, but I was like, I'm not going to watch this over and over again, and I need the space, so I might have sold it off. So I can't tell you that. Other people will be able to compare that, but I'll tell you what is on this Blu-ray. First of all, you get the movie, and it looks great. And it is wonderful. Extras, where would you go? It's a deleted scene asking interviewees where they would go if they had a time machine. It's 5 minutes. One of the things that Bob Burns owned was the actual time machine prop from George Pal's The Time Machine. And it worked. And they tell the story in the documentary a little of how it was lost for a while, and then it was found like in an antique store, and what they did to restore it. He had that, and he had the big thing that Bob Burns had was the King Kong armature. The armature is the little metal skeleton inside a stop motion figure that was used in film, where it's all little metal joints and ball bearings and things that allow you to move each individual part of it one frame at a time. Over time, the foam rubber and the fur and all the stuff that is wrapped around an armature to create King Kong, it just decays and falls apart and the glue dries out and all that. So a lot of times all that's left are these metal skeletons. But if you hold that armature, you are holding the 1933 King Kong in your hand. So that was a big thing that he loved to share and show off. And there are photos of him on the set of Peter Jackson's. Peter Jackson, knowing Bob Burns, cast Bob and Kathy as extras in his version of King Kong. And apparently Bob brought that armature with him to New Zealand so people could see it and take pictures with it. So he was always very generous with sharing that kind of stuff. Big Bear Horror-Fi Film Festival 2013 Q&A. That is a 10-minute Q&A after a screening of this film. The Raven Report is a 4-minute local Utah mini review segment on Beast Wishes when it was playing at a Utah documentary film festival. Blooper Reel is 5 minutes, and a studio panel from 2012. It is another Q&A basically discussing this film, and that is 54 minutes. So that's pretty substantial extra. So the packaging is this. Now online, some people I was reading just the other day were there's a little bit of a scuttlebutt because the company releasing this had used an AI generated sort of painted looking image to advertise this film. If you see that online and you're like, I'm not going to buy that, it's got an AI cover. It actually doesn't. The cover is that. So, which is, I believe, different. It's different than the cover that was on the previous DVD release. So Beast Wishes, Bob and Kathy Burns, wonderful people, both sadly have gone on to their big prop department in the sky, the big monster, and may their monster movie marathon never end on the other side of reality where they are. Available now on Blu-ray from Anchor Bay.